Hello there everyone, I'm System Check 66. Hiya, how you doing? We got to talk about the Shadows of Rose DLC. Now, I've been covering the Shadows of Rose stuff just because it's been like a very Resident Evil couple of months, you know, RE4 remake being announced, etc. Seeing gameplay, story trailers, along with like the gold edition of Resident Evil Village. And a lot of you will know, if you watch my previous videos, I'm not Resident Evil Village's biggest fan. I think that it has some great moments, some good parts. As a standalone product, I think that it would have done a lot better in my eyes, for me personally. But as a Resident Evil titled canon entry, it didn't hit the mark for me. It was a 7 out of 10 game, well made, well produced game in its own right. But if it carries the Resident Evil name, you know, and all the rest of it, and the way that it fucked with the lore and some of the things it did to the canon, as well as stuff it added to the story, was just batshit crazy, and I didn't really like it. I'm not saying that other games haven't done this previously, but this took it one step further, a little too far. And we had a time jump at the ending, so spoilers for those of you who don't know. We're introduced to Rose Winters, as she's a teenager. The time jumps from Ethan's death and Chris, Mia, and baby Rose escaping the village as it explodes. And then we cut to the epilogue, and it shows Rose at Ethan's grave, putting flowers down. Government man comes along. Don't really know who he is. He could be one of the Wolfhound Pack, one of those soldiers, or just whoever, random. But he does say something at one point, you remind me a lot of him. And that kind of made me think that he'd met Ethan, or he was part of the Wolfhound Pack, and, you know, he's friends with Chris or something. So, yeah, she gets in the car with him, Jeep, should I say. They drive off down the road, and then we get a little glimpse at what we think is Ethan walking down the road in the distance, and the car sort of stops. So a lot of people were like, well, what does that mean? You know, people did some boundary breaks and actually saw that it was Ethan's model in his shirt, you know, his blue shirt and stuff. And a lot of people were like, okay, so what does this mean? What does that mean? Does it mean that Ethan survived and he's actually alive? Does it mean that Rose can see him subconsciously? We didn't know. But this explains it all, basically. So Shadows of Rose is a DLC that was added to the Resident Evil Village Gold Edition, along with a third-person mod for Ethan, you know, during that campaign, and also some extra characters for mercenaries. But Shadows of Rose was a continuation of the Winter story, and apparently is the last of the Winter story. That's what Capcom have stated and said. So Shadows of Rose does clear up a lot. It's very short, I will say that. Now, I haven't technically played the game, just because I'm going to play it when I feel like it. When I have the money to buy it, I'll drop the £15. That's a lot, really, personally, you know, for me to drop on a short campaign and one that reuses a lot of assets. It's very lazily made, I will say that. I have seen gameplay. It's out now, so I've watched gameplay. And I don't know what you want me to say, other than it kind of reminds me of one of the Resident Evil remakes, because it's third person, the way it controls and plays and stuff, and the horror vibes in it that are in it. But it's just not as good, because it doesn't resemble Resident Evil in my eyes. So it's just a third person, you know, over the shoulder, shoot 'em up / survival horror, you know, hybrid thing. That's what I look at it as. It's hard to get my exact point across correctly, because I don't really know what they're doing with this series or what this is. So I have watched the story all the way through. This will have spoilers in it, and I don't think they're spoilers that really matter, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things. Resident Evil has lost me recently with Village and the way the story, you know, was told and where it's going. It's completely lost me, that's the thing, and RE6 sort of did that. But the weirdest thing is, RE6, it didn't have stuff like this. Like, it's still lined up with bioweapons and bioterror. Except for the whole doppelganger thing, you know, with Ada and all that was ridiculous. But I mean, this does more ridiculous things than, say, that game does. Story-wise and just whatever. Like, maybe RE6 is a little bit more OTT gameplay wise, but you know, Village wasn't no slouch. Like, we had the whole Chris segment of the game, and he was calling in airstrikes and shit, or like he was pointing a laser and then just bombing the fuck out of some of these POWs. And then it resembled like Call of Duty. But anyway, besides the point, Shadows of Rose. Here's the rundown of the story. What is it essentially? Okay, if you've played Evil Within or Evil Within 2, this is Evil Within. Literally. Like, but with a Resident Evil name on it. They have copied Evil Within. So, Rose meets up with this guy called Kay. Kay is part of the Wolfhound pack. Yeah, one of Chris's people. That we don't see because they've got masks and stuff on, right? So, he was probably there during that whole village mission. And he says to Rose, because he says, how you been getting on, kid? She's like, yeah, you know, I stay away from people at school, I get teased, bullied. He's like, you still having problems with those girls? And Rose is like, yeah, you know, I just keep myself to myself because of these powers, etc, etc. The powers are never actually shown outside of the Megamycete's consciousness. It's going to make sense in a minute, well, or at least it might do. So he says, okay, so she says, I just want these powers gone. There's a way to get rid of these powers. I'd give them up in a heartbeat. And then he's like, okay, well, what if there was a way? And she's like, what do you mean? So Kay says to her, you know, we recovered some of the Megamycete and we store it, we keep it stored in a lab. She's like, alright. So he then takes her to a lab, very similar, man, from the hospital, sort of from RE3 Remake, definitely, like the little room they're in. So it might have been a reused asset from that game, I don't know. But anyway, he's got a little jar with a Megamycete in it, and he says, yeah, by all means, go ahead, go do what you got to do, you know. And she asks, well, how can this be? And he's like, you can basically, like, you know, you can go into the Megamycete's consciousness, essentially. So then suddenly I'm thinking, well, that's literally like Ruvik's mind from Evil Within. It's like Inception or The Matrix. We all know where they're going with it, okay? So I can't remember if she touches it or just sort of like links to the Megamycete, but she's able to, because obviously she is like a DNA match and copy of Ava, you know, and Evelyn, essentially, so she can interact with the Megamycete. So anyway, she goes into it, and this is the story part, so I wasn't watching the gameplay, just the story, because the gameplay to me looked kind of boring and a little bit just ridiculous. Anyway, because it's like I said, it's carrying that Resident Evil name. So there will be things that I miss, because I haven't played through the whole game, I haven't read the notes, etc, etc, all the extra lore, so it's just the story and some of the gameplay that I'll talk about, that I've seen, you know. Like I said previously, £15 to drop £15 on it. I don't have that money at the moment. I might have next month, next payday, but at the moment I could spend money and buy it, you know, and go there and buy it, but it's not worth it from what I've seen. I had to try before I buy. It's not worth it. So I'm not going to, but I can still talk about what I've watched, what I've seen. So the story then sort of throws her into, I think it's Dimitrescu's castle. She starts off in Dimitrescu's castle in sort of like the basement levels where all the torture chambers are and stuff, the prison, and she gets to understand what the goo is. If the goo catches her, a little bit like Laura from Evil Within, if you step on the blood, she'd catch Sebastian. So similar to that, and yeah, and if she gets caught by the goo, they drag her, like these hands from hell drag her down. So she starts to understand all that, and then she starts to get help from someone. She doesn't know who it is, and you've seen it in the trailers. They kind of write on the walls and the floor and stuff, and it illuminates. And at one point she says, you know, what are you, my guardian angel? Then she says something like, oh, are you Gabriel or are you Michael? And he says, Michael. Okay, so look, let me just stop it right there. Everyone knows who it is. I knew who he was. Everybody knows who it is. Yes, it's Ethan Winters. It's Ethan Winters. We all knew it. We all know it. It's not a surprise. You know, his consciousness is still there with the Megamycete, so it is what it is. So anyway, Ethan helps her, because I'd be slipping up if I try to keep this a secret. Ethan keeps helping her. She gets to Benevito's house, I think, and in the trailer she sees this weird, like, Alice in Wonderland reference, and that happens. So all the dolls and everything's huge, and she's like Alice in Wonderland. Stuff like that's really cool. She gets all the powers, you know, she upgrades her powers much in the same way Samus does in Super Metroid or anyone else, you know, in any game. You just upgrade your powers as you go, and by the end of it she can kind of teleport, or at least move really fast like Wesker can, you know, away from enemies and things like that, dodging enemies. She can, you know, just disintegrate enemies with her powers. Like she puts her hand out and she can push and disintegrate and push back enemies and disintegrate them. She uses it on these weird flower things. I forget what Ethan says they are. They're just part of the Megamycete, obviously, so she can basically get rid of them, kind of like Hellgates from Doom 2016, or whatever they were called. Not Hellgates, but yeah, Hellgates. So yeah, like, I'm trying to remember now. She does come face to face with a girl that looks similar to her, and we were wondering who that was. Some people said it might be Mother Miranda disguising. It's not. They're like clones that the Megamycete keeps spawning out, and one of them helps her, grabs her when she's getting sort of sucked into the ground by the Megamycete, by the mold. She helps her, and then she comes across the merchant. What's his damn name? I always forget his name. The Duke, that's it. She comes across the Duke, and the Duke in this realm is evil, like he's a bad guy. And it kind of shows you that he used to be one of the lords, definitely. So he's being used as a bad guy. He's being used to lure Rose into a trap that he sets up. She falls for it. She wants to get the crystal. It's not that easy, because apparently this certain crystal is the thing that will take her powers away. Like, she can basically, I guess, give them... I guess the crystal absorbs them. She can give them to the crystal, takes them. But this one's a fake. An evil Duke basically sends his face eaters to trap her, you know, and she ends up essentially in the dungeon part of the castle. And if I remember right, there's this sort of new face eater. It's like a mini boss, and it's got all these like phases and stuff on its body. So it's not that interesting to look at, to be honest with you. It reminds me of something out of Silent Hill, and not as good as Silent Hill enemies, or at least the older Silent Hill enemies, so it is what it is. Now, Michael actually tells Rose to jump off a cliff to save herself, so she does. But she wakes up outside House Benevito. A lot of stuff that I didn't get to see. All I will say is I did see one part where that doll of her mother, of Mia, it chases you, and I've got to admit the Benevito part of that was really, really well done. Even if it doesn't resemble Resident Evil, it's very well done. Every time you move, the doll moves, and when you turn around, it's stuck in position. It reminded me so much of Condemned, where those mannequins would come to life. They'd move, you'd look, and they'd be stuck there, and then eventually they came to life and started attacking your character. So yeah, all that stuff's very cool. The Benevito house is generally creepy and quite scary, and I like the ideas that they have during that moment. And then there's the whole Alice in Wonderland part, etc, etc. Well, actually, at one point he transports her, or says come with me or something, and she's transported into Mia and Ethan's old house. So you get to explore that for a little bit. Obviously I haven't seen the gameplay of it, but you do see it in the cutscene and stuff, so it's cool. You get to reminisce about these two characters, you know, and she gets to see what her parents were like when she was a baby and stuff, and she remembers it, you know, but just being a baby in a very young age. And just like in Village, Evelyn makes an appearance, and just like Resident Evil 7, she pops up. So she reveals herself. She's a remnant of Rose's consciousness, which has survived through Ethan and made its way into the Black God, which is the Megamycete, or the part of the Megamycete. Evelyn is disgusted by Rose, who she dismisses in various ways as weak, unloved, and undeserving of Mia's attention over herself, because that Mia was Evelyn's mother, or she saw her as mother. As they are both within the realm of consciousness, Evelyn's illusionary powers leads Rose back to the entrance of House Benevito, where the two have a showdown. Although Rose manages to suppress Evelyn, this is where I started to see, you know, during the story cutscenes, this is where it picked up from. So yeah, so Rose manages to suppress Evelyn with her abilities. It's much stronger, and before she can like chuck a piece of furniture to kill Rose, Ethan shows up and he saves her. and she falls through this kind of this doorway, but it's like I said, basically these levels are called stratums. It's essentially, like I said, it's Inception or Evil Within, and they have these things called stratums. They're just levels. It's like a video game. They're just levels. An old school video game where it's just level and then level and then level 2, level 3. You know what I mean? So that's what stratum is. She falls out of the door, off a cliff, yeah, and then boom, she's in the next stratum. So the next stratum is the village. She realizes Michael is in fact the fragment of Ethan's consciousness preserved within the Megamycete, and fearing he is gone for good because she thinks he's dead, that killed him. So Rose continues on her own. So this stuff obviously I didn't see because this is all gameplay. So passing the corpses of many more duplicates of herself who have been preyed on by face eaters. That reminds me of all the Alice clones from the films. I wonder if that wasn't an inspiration. Being sarcastic. Finding a hole in the ground, Rose jumps down and discovers a cultic monument depicting 2 goat-headed priests sacrificing a child for the Black God. Strange, reminds me of Resi Evil 4. Maybe that's a nod. Further, she finds the Black God itself, or rather the realm's representation of Black God, growing new Rose duplicates. That's the part that I saw, just spitting them out, kind of like Alien Queen. Which she learns is part of a research project by someone even more senior than the Masked Duke. Ooh. With her counterparts being culled to track down those with superhuman abilities. Soon she finds the architect of these experiments, the archived consciousness of Mother Miranda. Okay. Right, so this isn't explained in the cutscenes, if you can imagine, but it's explained better here. So I'm reading from this and telling you what I've watched as well. Having had decades of study, the Black God, the copy, Miranda is well aware she is imprisoned within this realm and has spent the past 16 years trying to escape it and try once more to bring back Ava. By chance, Rose's proximity to the Black God in the lab has allowed her to utilize the mold's quorum sensing abilities, with Rose's encounter with Kay being completely imaginary, so it never happened. It was just, yeah. As a pretext, it shows you that as well, she's sitting on the bench alone instead of talking to him. As a pretext to lure her inside the realm, Miranda had hoped to defeat Rose easily with her willing to relinquish her powers with the crystal and hijack her body, but Miranda's attempts are halted due to Evelyn's own interference. With the help of Ethan, Rose escapes Miranda's clutches, and there's a great part because Ethan's just blowing away like face eaters and stuff like that. He's got this shotgun. You're walking with him, running with him, whatever. Everything's crumbling. This cave is crumbling, and he's just blowing fuckers away. And it was really cool scene. I like that. Really cool moment. So Rose escapes Miranda's clutches and finds herself in a barren plain populated only by crystal. Although she is now having second thoughts about carrying out her wish, Rose interacts with it and drains herself of her power. No longer a threat, Miranda takes her opportunity to strike, which Ethan interferes with. He gets in the way, and she impales him. Now faced with a crisis where her powers are absolutely essential, Rose interacts with the crystal once more to save her. She throws it, smashes it on the ground, and and she absorbs the powers. And that's when you see that moment in the trailer where she says, "I've got this." So, because her dad says, "Don't worry, I've got this," and she's like, "No, I've got this." She interacts with the crystal once more to save her father. In her showdown with Miranda, Rose gains greater and greater powers. Oh, okay, so we get those powers at the end. Cool. So she's able to just zip around, dodge Miranda's attacks, and she even has one that ends up leeching them from Miranda until her consciousness perishes. And at the end, she uses that ability to just calcify her, just completely destroy her. Now, having a moment of peace, Rose shares one last moment with Ethan. It's very touching, very well handled. The acting from Ethan's voice actor is incredibly good compared to anything he's done from Seven or Village. And all the voice acting in general in the game is top tier. A-star. I can't complain about that. So after that, Rose shares one last moment with Ethan and returns to the real world, having chosen to keep her abilities. So this takes place before the ending. You know, the very end scene of Village that we talked about earlier. So it's all a prequel to that scene, essentially. That's what this whole thing is. But yeah, she comes out of the Megamycete consciousness, and she's just in a chair in the lab, and yeah, boom, and then she's in the real world, and she opens her hand, and there's Ethan's ring, his wedding ring. So that's confusing. I don't know if she had it previously, or if she got it from the consciousness of the Megamycete. See, things start to get a bit weird. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, she ends up holding the ring. So, and then essentially, yeah, the moment where she's on the bus, gets off the bus, you know, that part from the ending of Village plays out exactly the same, and Ethan's still walking down the road. But it makes more sense now, having seen this and seeing the gameplay and the story play out. It makes more sense who Ethan is. They're always going to be there in her consciousness. So that's why she decides to keep the powers and says to that agent, I've got powers that Chris doesn't even know, I have, that I could show you. And that's because she had them in the consciousness, in the Megamycete's consciousness. However, whether she can use those outside of it, who fucking knows? I don't know. Apparently, mode was inspired by a cut addendum to the Village story mode, in which the player was to briefly take on the role of Rose, like with the main game. Shadow of Rose's script was created between Japanese and English speaking writers. Capcom developed the story outline, with writer Harris Orkin providing native English dialogue. So that explains why it's such a clusterfuck. Now, here's my thoughts on everything. I don't like this. I don't like it. It's going to have to be on sale before I pick it up and play through it. I don't like it. It's not a hero situation, even though the look of Chris put me off constantly. But anyway, I got used to it. It's nothing like that. I thought we were going to get Chris heading to the BSAA headquarters and finding out what the fuck was going on with that bioweapon that they find in the chopper. But no. I mean, I don't know if that's still coming, but the amount of time it took for them to get this out, and this is literally just like a greatest hits selection when it comes to locations and story elements and things like that. It is what it is, people. It is what it is. I mean, when I watched the story, I was like, okay, yeah, it's kind of what I thought it would be. And when I see the gameplay, I was like, alright, gameplay's cool, but it got that more survival horror feel and etc, but I'm just sitting there watching the gameplay thinking, I'm going to end up playing this game and just wanting to throw on like Resident Evil 2 Remake, or wait for Resident Evil 4 Remake, or even play the Resident Evil 3 Remake, because that is still Resident Evil. It still reminds me of Resident Evil. This doesn't. This is a wannabe Evil Within 2 Inception ripoff. This is what this is. This is the stuff that they want to take the series into. All this consciousness, like Akira style, just doesn't work with Resident Evil. It doesn't work with that name. You should have. What are they doing? This is why they called the game Village. It was Village like originally, and then they were like, Resident Evil Village. But they said the reason for the title of Village is because we're moving away from the Resident Evil that you know. What do you mean the Resident Evil that I know? Resident Evil hasn't been Resident Evil since the 90s, the early 90s. Maybe the mid 2000s. We'll say the mid 2000s, because that's when the RE remake came out. It was incredible. And then you kind of got back on track with 7 and then 2. And 2, the remake of 2 was exactly kind of what I wanted from a Resident Evil game, up to date. 3 flopped because it wasn't as good as the original, but it still is like that. It still has that core, more old school Resident Evil, sort of story and feel and mechanics. But this I don't know. Like, what do I say? If I want to play something like this, I'll play Silent Hill. I'll wait for Silent Hill 2 Remake, or I'll watch Inception, or I'll watch The Matrix, or I'll play Evil Within 1 and 2. They're perfectly serviceable games, action horror games. Like, Evil Within 2 is incredible. I don't need to play a Resident Evil game to get that. That's the problem. It's like, why are you going down this route? It doesn't make any sense. The ending says it all. She wakes up and she's holding her father's ring. Now, I can't remember having watched through the 30 minutes of cutscenes, but I couldn't remember if she already had the ring, or father gave her the ring, because it's shown at the end. There's some significance to that scene, to you seeing his ring, to then she opens her hand and the ring's in her hand. So you're telling me that she was able to get something that is in the consciousness of the Megamycete. Doesn't really exist in the real world, but she's able to get that from the Megamycete and bring it out into the real world. This is the stuff that doesn't work. Do you get where I'm coming from? It's silly. When it comes to Resident Evil, this is a series that was built on a horror basis, yeah, of a pharmaceutical company that existed, that created all these products, but behind closed doors, they were making all these bioweapons. You know, these things that were actually in front of people's faces. You know, these monsters, these abominations, these viruses that turn people into zombies, they were all real. They were all grounded in some sort of reality, you know. Someone could create a virus that infected the whole world. Don't go there. I know what people are going to say, but yes. See what I'm saying? That's still something that's very real. Maybe we didn't have zombies from it, but could that happen? Maybe if someone messed around with Ebola and rabies, we could get a virus that was like that could send people nutty, like in 28 days later. Definitely. So all that stuff was grounded in some sort of reality. You know, it had some sort of factual evidence there to back it up. And all the monsters and stuff, there was always an explanation. They were injected with the virus and then they messed about with some DNA. It's like breeding dogs, different types of dogs. You mess with the DNA, you get different types of breeds and new types of breeds. Same thing, just on a more deadly level, a more dangerous level. Resident Evil was always grounded in some sort of reality, you know. And as time went on, yes, it got a bit more silly and over the top, definitely. I was speaking to a person in my comment section the other day. I think Code Veronica was the one that jumped the shark. Maybe a little bit with Wesker's super abilities and, you know, Alexia being able to control the virus and have her own style of powers. Even that's explained. The fact that she can set things alight is because her blood is explosive. Her blood basically it creates fire. Like, it's hard to explain, but it can create fire. She sprays blood everywhere. You see it in the game during the boss fight. Chris is running away and boom, and then it ignites. She can ignite the fire. Cool. Even that stuff, it's like, alright, I guess it's over the top, but it's still better than this Silent Hill / Inception / Evil Within type of storytelling and type of style that they're going with. It just doesn't work for me when it comes to Resident Evil. It doesn't work for me, you know. Dead Space has the marker. It can fuck with people. That's cool. That's always been there from the very beginning. Resident Evil didn't fuck about with this sort of stuff. Even Resident Evil 4 wasn't really messing with this sort of stuff. There's a difference between Leon Kennedy being infected and having nightmares. Yeah, something we can all relate to, having a nightmare, or vivid dream, to having someone a character actually go within this bioweapons subconscious, you know, and fighting all these subconscious threats. And then when she leaves, she has this thing materialized in her hand. It doesn't make sense. It's silly. It's gobbledygook. That's what I'm saying. It's gobbledygook. Like, that's how it feels. Someone's just written down, that'll sound cool, that'll work. Okay, cool. I think the whole daughter-father relationship thing is handled fine at the end. I think it's, you know, some of the best acting that I've seen, and voice acting and facial capture that I've seen from, I guess, Resident Evil 7 and Village. Like, it was non-existent in those games, but I found the ending to Village to be a lot more a lot more I don't know, a lot more heartwarming, a lot more bittersweet than sad than this, you know. I just it is what it is. It kind of it plays it very safe. It just gives fans of Village that conclusion that they want, you know. And if this is the winter story, cool, I'm fine with that. I'm right with that. But I don't think the next game is going to leave this sort of stuff alone. I think they're going to continue it. It's like, as much as I like Resident Evil Revelations 2, I hate the Natalia character. I think it's stupid. This whole, you know, removing Alex Wesker's consciousness and putting it into Natalia, that's where this started, and it is silly. And the thing is that this was going to be originally, or Village was going to be Revelations 3, so they were going to mess about with this whole consciousness swapping crap, and this is what this is. This is what you get. So you get Akira style mind powers and Wesker abilities where she can dodge and stuff, and It's just really silly. Like, Wesker's abilities were through the virus. That's why he could move really fast. And it was a cinematic choice. It wasn't that he could move like you see him moving. It's just he was really fast. But they showed the action the way they showed it. You know, like in The Matrix. Like in reality, when Neo's dodging the bullets, he's fucking dodging them like super fast like an agent. But we see it in slow motion. That's not him, you know, controlling bullet time. It's showing you in bullet time that he's dodging these bullets and stuff instead of him doing it all fast. So it's the same thing with Wesker. He just had these really fast abilities and yeah, you know, then they kind of went with Resi Evil 5. They took it up a notch, and he was like shape shifting and stuff or whatever he was doing, but or shifting out of the plane of existence or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And that's kind of what she does here. But I think, yeah, I mean, what can I say? I think I like the older games. When I play Resident Evil 2 Remake, I don't get none of this shit. I just get that straight standard Umbrella fucked up a town that used a virus. That's it. There's none of this stuff. This stuff doesn't belong in Resident Evil. And unfortunately, it's a style choice. You know? It's a style choice. That's how they want the game. That's the style they want to go with. And I don't like it. It doesn't, you know. The game itself, it's cheap. Definitely, they reused assets. It was cheaply put together. Definitely, even though it is well made, doesn't mean that it wasn't cheaply put together or cheaply handled. But I just can't get over the fact that it took them this long. I really can't get over that fact. It took them this long to basically reuse assets. And yeah, and some of the ideas in it are great. They really are. I'm not even discrediting the games itself, the gameplay side of things, the way that it is put together. But it's reused assets. Like, it's still, you know, it's like Resident Evil 3 Remake. There wasn't enough different from the Resident Evil 2 Remake. It just sort of reused assets, you could tell. The original Resident Evil 3 did that. Yes, it did. But it was so different from RE2. No one really noticed. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about Shadows of Rose. I'm glad I didn't get it straight away. I'm glad that I've waited, and I will play through it. I'll do a let's play at some point. There you go. I'll give you guys a let's play, but it's not one that I'm in a rush to play, and I'm not going to drop 15 quid just to play it. There we go. You know, it's just not worth it. I wasn't that big a fan of Village. It just didn't vibe with me. You know, I wasn't on that type of vibe. Some people loved it, others hated it. I didn't hate it, I just didn't like it that much. So I thought to myself, why not keep that £15, just have it saved up, you know, wait for Callisto Protocol to come out, because that is a day one for me, and watch the cutscenes, watch the story through, because that's the thing that was really drawing me to it, and watch some of the gameplay. And I think that some of the gameplay moments, especially in House Benevito, are really well done. I think they're really cool, but it should be a different game. It shouldn't be a Resident Evil game. I don't know why Capcom didn't just say fuck it and you know, make Village its own thing, and then, or make this its own thing. It doesn't make sense to me. So I mean they even said they wanted Village to be moving away from the traditional Resident Evil sort of style and flavour, etc., etc. Blah blah blah. All the PR speak, you know, that they could get out at the time they were getting out. But when it's all said and done, this is basically a worse version of Resident Evil 4 played in first person. And when you play it in third person, you're going to wish that it was Resident Evil 4. You're going to wish that it was the Resident Evil 4 remake, that you were playing the Resident Evil 4 remake, because that is what Village is. It tried to copy 4, did it badly. In parts it was good. It tried to throw all these other things in there, and it just became a mess of a game, essentially. It's the Alien Covenant of the Resident Evil series. There we go. You know, I would say Resident Evil 5 is the Alien Resurrection of the Resident Evil series, but Resident Evil Village is the Alien Covenant of the Resident Evil series, because it has some great moments, and it understands about all the older Resident Evil audience. It knows, hey, we should throw something that's super creepy. You remember this from Silent Hill, House Benevito, giant baby chasing you. Cool. Like, that's all the Silent Hill heads out there. You remember Chris from Resident Evil 5 going balls to the wall, all out action. There's your end part. There's your end moment with Chris. You know, trying to think of the things that are actually... Oh, People who love Resident Evil 4, here you go. You're in a village, surrounded by a bunch of lichens. They're not even villagers anymore, they're werewolves. And they're trying to like flank you and take you out. And that bit, or those parts, remind me so much of Resident Evil 4. So yeah, as for classic, I guess, House Dimitrescu. You remember the Tyrant chasing you in... Remember Mr. X in RE2 Remake? Have some Lady Dimitrescu coming after you, you know. And then we'll have the mansion or the castle resembling like those old school Resident Evil locations. So it has its moments and it knows its audience, but then you have, for every moment that calls back to Resident Evil that's a good horror moment, you have your Alien Covenant moments where Michael Fassbender kisses himself. There we go. Everybody hated that shit. It was retarded. And then I can't remember the other parts of that film, but there are moments in it that are fucking dumb. And so far removed from the original Alien and Aliens, even Alien 3, that you're like, what is this mess? And that's what Village is. It's like, oh, I'm fighting the Lycans. This reminds me of Resident Evil 4. And what do we have here? Oh, it's a boss character that can levitate metal like Magneto out of X-Men, use it to walk on his steps, and then becomes a huge Transformer Megatron looking boss while you fight him in a tank that Chris Redfield made out of scrap parts, and he somehow knows that Chris Redfield punched a boulder in a volcano one time. Who told him this information? Nobody else was there except for Chris, Sheva, Wesker, Josh, and Jill, and they only show up in the helicopter. So who the fuck told him that happened? And then you have Miranda, the next boss, who can shapeshift and look like people. That was me hitting my face, because I'm fed up with it all. So yeah, in summary, Shadows of Rose, don't expect nothing outside of the realm of Resident Evil Village's storytelling. The ending is heartfelt, definitely. Is it earned? I don't know. I don't really know. I think the ending to Village kind of, that was like the best part. Definitely one of the most emotional moments in a Resident Evil game. However, like people have stated, Ethan was so bland during the events of 7 and 8 that by the end I didn't really care. It was just a really well done scene, the music was on point, and Chris couldn't save him, as usual. But yeah, it was just, it reached for the emotions of fathers with kids. If you have a daughter, you know what I mean. But then you think back to Last of Us and how incredible that intro is, with Joel losing his daughter. And this didn't hold a candle to that. So it's just Capcom reaching for straws. They're just trying to tug at those emotional heartstrings, you know. And as much as it was well acted and well scripted and all the rest of it, the game didn't earn that emotion from me. The game's 7 was alright, but Village, the entirety of Village, didn't earn that from me. And Shadows of Rose, from what I've seen during the story and the gameplay, it doesn't earn that from me. You don't earn that emotion from me. I don't play Resident Evil to be emotionally fucking held to ransom. Let's just say that. You gotta earn that shit. Like, don't emotionally hold me to ransom for something that's gone so south. I don't care what happens next. That's the problem. So look, it is what it is. Watch my Resident Evil 7 review. I highly recommend you watch that, just to get my thoughts on Resident Evil 7 Village and this whole concluding winter storyline thing that they've come up with. You'll get my opinions on that. But Shadows of Rose, I'm glad that I didn't spend my £15. I don't think that you should go out and drop the 15 if you're not that big into Resident Evil Village. If you're a huge Village fan, you loved what they were doing, and you love the direction they're going in, then by all means, go ahead, drop that £15. Go and get the deluxe edition, do whatever. But for me personally, I'll probably just wait and pick up the gold edition of the game later down the line, as opposed to dropping some money that I'd rather keep, you know, in my bank account, rather than spend it on that, or maybe go and buy another game that's worth getting, one that I'll enjoy more than this, you know, or whatever. A Blu-ray copy of Ghost in the Shell, like, you know, Standalone Complex 1 and 2, like, whatever. There's so many different things. A book even that I might enjoy. So many other things that I can spend that money on, so I think I'll hold on to it. Yeah, I was interested in the story, but the story did exactly what I thought it'd do. I actually predicted it loads of people predicted what it would be about, and again, it just, I predicted it, and it didn't shock me because it was exactly how I thought it'd play out. So again, there's no innovation anymore. There's no surprising me as an old school fan anymore with what they're doing. So it is what it is. But then my thoughts on Rose. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. And are you scared for where this series is heading if you're an old school Resident Evil fan? I don't think I am anymore. I think I've been burnt so many times that I just want Resident Evil 4 remake, and then they can do whatever they fucking want with it at this point, because it's so far removed from what I remember and what I loved about the series. That's the truth. So I love covering Resident Evil content, but I think in future I'm just gonna go back to the older games and cover the old games and make content about those, because that's where my heart lies, really. But I can't wait for Resident Evil 4 remake. They seem to be doing well with some of the remakes. RE2 remake was good, and I think 4 has the potential to be damn good, real good. And they've added more horror elements into it, and it shows. So I've got my hopes up for that. But anything post Resident Evil 4 remake, I don't think I'm going to be interested in. I don't like this folk horror leaning that they're going with. I don't think it suits Resident Evil. But anyway, I just want Chris to go and search the BSAA headquarters. There's been a viral outbreak. Chris, Jill go in there. They finish the story like that, just how they sort of started, and reveal some secrets and some plot twists along the way. That's what I want. That's how I would love them to end the series and make it survival horror. So, lack of ammo, lack of this, lack of that. But I don't think they'll do that. So we'll have to see. I don't know what the time jump sort of means for the series. Apparently it's 2032 or something. So it's been like 16 years. It's something like that. It's like 2035 or 2032. So I don't know if they're going to continue with the time jump or go back in time. Who fucking knows? Rose Winters and Ethan Winters and the Winters storyline is finished. Like, apparently from what I read as well, Mia lost custody of Rose and can only see her along with Chris here and there, and Rose is almost like brought up by the government. So I don't know what they're trying to do with that character. They're setting things up, but they said it's the end of the Winters storyline, so there you go. I don't think she's ever going to be seen again, just like Jake Muller from Resident Evil 6, or Billy Cohen, or Carlos Oliveira, or Sheva Anamar, or any of the characters that we ended up liking. So yeah, all the ones from RE6. Sherry Birkin, for fuck's sake. Where's she gone? So don't hold your breath. The next one, I don't know. It's probably going to be some story made up of gobbledygook and fucking stupidness, and I don't know, people's consciousnesses swapping around and shit, and turn it into Evil Within, Silent Hill combined. Who knows? But they're my thoughts anyway. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of everything. What did you think of Shadows of Rose? Did you get to play it? Did you pick it up and play it? Have you downloaded it yet? Do you think you're going to hold on to your money just like me? Have you gone and got the gold edition? I think I might just wait for the gold edition, because it's, as a package, it's a full game. But when that comes down in price as well, when it's like £12 or 15 quid, that's when I might pick that up. So so let me know what you think about it all down in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been System Check 66, and you have a nice day, stranger.